and welcome back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe Retrospective, taking a look at each film in the MCU and seeing how well they hold up. Last time, we saw the ending of Phase 2 and the beginning of a new hero with Ant-Man, a fun, bite-sized escapade. Today, we look at the start of Phase 3 and the first of the Infinity Saga's closing chapter with Captain America: Civil War. Before we dive into the movie itself, let's discuss the initial structure of Phase 3 and how it changed. Kevin Feige and Marvel first announced the slate of Phase 3 films in 2014 at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood. At the time, Guardians of the Galaxy was still in theaters, Avengers: Age of Ultron was still in post-production, and Ant-Man was in the middle of filming. The first confirmed film was a third Captain America movie. They announced the subtitle as Serpent Society as a decoy before unveiling its actual title, Civil War. From there, the other films announced were as follows: Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Inhumans, and Avengers: Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2. Obviously, as time went on, dates shifted and projects changed. The most apparent anomaly is with Inhumans. Since Marvel Television was still acting alongside the rest of the MCU, they tried to keep things tied together. With their spin-off series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they introduced the concept of the Inhumans in their second season, with the intention that the characters would cross over with the Avengers. This was all because of the head of Marvel Entertainment, Ike Perlmutter. Perlmutter wanted to have a franchise as profitable as X-Men. Since they were owned by Fox, Perlmutter decided to draw from another group of mutated individuals and chose the Inhumans because of the vast number of characters within that circle. There was just one problem. Perlmutter is a racist, sexist bigot. I mentioned before in Iron Man 2 his tasteless remark about the recasting of Rhodey, but he's also responsible for both Black Panther and Captain Marvel taking so long to join the MCU. Simply put, he didn't believe they would be profitable. It became very stifling for Feige that he eventually went to Disney with an ultimatum: get Perlmutter out of the picture or he would quit Marvel Studios entirely. Seeing as Feige was at the center of the MCU's development and made the success it is today, Disney made the smart choice in buying out Perlmutter's contract to remove any influence he had on any Marvel Studios production. They also had Feige report directly to Disney CEO Bob Iger from then on. As a result, Inhumans was pulled from the Phase 3 lineup. It's unclear whether this was done because Feige didn't want to make an Inhumans movie, or Perlmutter took it himself and gave it to Marvel Television. However, if I had to guess, I'd say it was the latter, especially given there was such a marketing effort done when the show was preparing to release, with the first 2 episodes being screened exclusively in IMAX theaters. The Inhumans show itself was a major disaster that is a whole other discussion for another time. Another significant change in the lineup of Phase 3 came from Sony. Since the start of the century, Sony held the rights to Spider-Man's films and made 2 separate attempts to create their own franchise, both of which failed due to executive interference. After the Amazing Spider-Man franchise was cancelled, Sony began discussing with Disney on the possibility of incorporating the web-slinging hero into the MCU, which had been in popular demand from fans since the first Avengers movie. A conversation of emails between the 2 companies leaked online shortly after Civil War was announced. However, it wasn't until the first official trailer for the movie that the character's presence in the MCU was confirmed. From there, 2 Spider-Man movies were announced as a co-production between Marvel and Sony. We'll discuss those films in their own videos. In addition to the 2 standalone features, Sony gave permission for the character to appear in 3 MCU films outside his own. These were Civil War and the 2 subsequent Avengers films, later named Infinity War and Endgame respectively. Another Phase 3 film that wasn't on the initial slate was the sequel to Ant-Man. This was because the first film hadn't come out yet, and Marvel wasn't sure how well the character would do. They did, however, had a lot of confidence in Winter Soldier as Civil War began development before it was even released. Both the Russo brothers and Marcus and McFeely returned to their respective roles as directors and writers. Marvel chose to adapt the famous Civil War comic book storyline by Mark Millar as it had been on their list for a long time. The decision came in during development, most likely due to the strained relationship between Marvel Studios and Joss Whedon after their conflicts when making Age of Ultron. It seemed that given Winter Soldier was a critical and financial success, Marvel wanted to see if the team behind that could film something Avengers-like. This is why many refer to Civil War as Avengers 2.5, since the majority of the team members introduced up to that point, minus Hulk and Thor, were present. There was also the introduction of new members to the team. Ant-Man was confirmed to be appearing in some form, but the biggest reveals came with Spider-Man and Black Panther. Spider-Man was added because Marvel wanted to take full advantage of the character as soon as possible while setting up his own story. Black Panther was chosen due to his iconic character and the representation of a black superhero that wasn't as present in the MCU aside from War Machine and Falcon. The most important thing to the team when making the movie was to not lose sight that this was still a Captain America movie. He had to be at the center of the film's conflict. Civil War premiered in 2016 and beat out DC's Batman vs. Superman, which followed a similar concept. It was one of the highest grossing films of the year and is widely regarded as one of the best Marvel movies ever made. However, with the juggernauts of Infinity War and Endgame, does Civil War still have a strong kick? To be honest, that's a rhetorical question, but let's try to answer it anyway. The film opens with a flashback to 1991 at a Hydra base in Siberia, where the Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes is being kept. He is awakened and conditioned through a set of German code words. He is then tasked with retrieving some unknown items and leaving no witnesses. He completes the operation with little difficulty. Afterward, he is put back on ice. This scene parallels First Avenger with foreshadowing the climax and reaffirms to the audience that this is still a Captain America movie that just so happens to feature Avengers. We got to the present in Lagos, where Cap is on a mission with his new team of Black Widow, Falcon, and Wanda. They are tracking down Brock Rumlow, who is leading a group of terrorists after a MacGuffin. The fight scene that follows shows off the great action that was utilized in Winter Soldier. It blends seamlessly. As Cap faces Rumlow, now in his comic book Crossbones look, he catches him off guard by mentioning Bucky. He then tries to suicide bomb, but Wanda manages to control the blast radius, at least for a few seconds until it explodes on the side of the building, killing innocent civilians. Wanda is left horrified at her actions. We then cut to MIT, where Tony Stark demonstrates some new technology called BARF. I know. It projects a memory as part of therapy. In this case, it's Tony's last moment with his parents before their death in a car accident. Once again, we see foreshadowing for the climax and more wonderful de-aging CG, with RDJ looking exactly how he did in the early 90s. He gives grants to all students' projects. We also learn that he and Pepper are no longer together. This is a minor nitpick for me. I always hate when a sequel story does this to a character that's in a relationship. They write them out by having them break up with their significant other. It's usually the easy way out when the actor isn't available. Thankfully, they make up for it by having it affect Tony's arc, while also leaving open the possibility for them to get back together. As Tony leaves the building, he is confronted by an unnamed woman, played by Alfre Woodard. Woodard's casting was subject to a lot of fan debate. When she was announced to be in the film, she was also revealed to be playing Mariah Dillard in the Marvel Netflix show Luke Cage. This led to many thinking that Marvel television shows would finally cross over with the movies. In actuality, RDJ suggested her before he knew of her involvement with the show. She's one of the first examples of actors playing more than one role in the MCU. In fact, Damian Porter, who appeared as Thanos in the Avengers post-credit scene, had a cameo as one of Rumlow's men earlier in the movie. The woman confronts Tony and blames him for her son's death, who was in Sokovia when Ultron leveled it. It's clear his past actions are still affecting him. Meanwhile, at the Avengers facility, Steve comforts Wanda by telling her that they can't save everybody, but that shouldn't mean they can't try. Vision abruptly appears and tells them Tony has arrived with the Secretary of State, Thunderbolt Ross himself. It's always nice when the MCU still acknowledges the Incredible Hulk. Ross explains that the UN is no longer willing to tolerate the Avengers working without government approval. He cites the Battle of New York against the Chitauri, the fall of Hydra in DC, the fall of Sokovia, and most recently Lagos as evidence of their careless actions. Despite the team doing all they can to save the world several times, many see them as vigilantes that don't face the consequences. He offers the team a solution, the Sokovia Accords. It's basically a written document that decree the Avengers will only act when a panel of government officials deem it necessary. He leaves them to decide. The team is split. Steve and Sam are against it, while Tony, Rhodey, Natasha, and Vision are for it. What I love about this is that we see and understand both sides. The arguments are clear, but you don't see a way to go. There is no right answer. During all this, former Sokovian Special Ops soldier Helmut Zemo, played by Daniel Bruhl, retrieves the book of the Winter Soldier code words from an old Hydra agent. He makes his presence well known in his first scene. He is scary. At the UN meeting in Vienna, where the Accords are being ratified, we meet the leader of Wakanda, King T'Chaka, played by John Connie, and his son Prince T'Challa, played by the late Chadwick Boseman. We'll talk more about him in Black Panther, but his performance here is iconic and unique. Truly a breath of fresh air in the MCU. The meeting is stopped due to a bombing, killing several leaders, including T'Chaka. Meanwhile, Steve attends Peggy's funeral, having recently passed in her sleep. Sharon, revealed to be her niece, gives her eulogy. They later see the bombing on the news, and footage implicating Bucky is shown. Steve goes after him, knowing that the authorities will most likely kill him, to get some answers. As Bucky tries to run, he is attacked by the Black Panther. As they all fight, they are eventually captured by War Machine. The Panther unmasked to reveal T'Challa, shocking Steve. The three, along with Sam, are taken into custody under the supervision of CIA agent Everett K. Ross, played by Martin Freeman. Ross has Bucky go under psychological evaluation and then extradition. Tony and Natasha arrive and offer Steve another chance to sign the Accords, which would give him immunity from the recent incident. After hearing about how it will affect Wanda's citizenship, Steve almost considers it, but remains firm in his decision. Speaking of, Wanda and Vision share some time together since she is not allowed to leave the base. They have great chemistry, and the romance between them does build, even if only slightly. Zemo arrives at the CIA base under the guise of the psychologist summoned for Bucky, and uses the Red Book to get under his control and reveal the mission report on his 1991 job. Bucky escapes as Tony, Natasha, Sharon, and T'Challa fight him, while Steve and Sam confront Zemo on what he wants, to which he says, to see an empire fall. Steve manages to catch up to Bucky and incapacitate him. Thunderbolt Ross, unhappy with the events transpired, gives Tony 36 hours to bring Steve, Sam, and Bucky in before doing it himself with lethal force. Steve and Sam get Bucky's memory back and realize that they're on their own. They have to stop Zemo from accessing the Winter Soldier base in Siberia, as Bucky's mission in 1991 had him stealing the Super Soldier Serum from S.H.I.E.L.D. and help creating more Winter Soldiers, which they believe he's after. Sam does say he knows a guy who can help. Likewise, Tony comes up with an idea to find a new recruit in Queens. Of course, we're talking about Peter Parker, played by Tom Holland. He visits Peter at his home with Aunt May, played by Marissa Tomei. He recruits Peter, with the cover story of him being hired as an intern for Tony as part of a grant. The best thing about this is that we skip the Spider-Man origin story. We saw it twice in under 20 years, so we're very familiar with it by now, and while Uncle Ben isn't named specifically, he is alluded to subtly. Meanwhile, Natasha convinces T'Challa to join them, seeing as he's adamant about getting Bucky, and Hawkeye frees Wanda from Vision and collects Scott Lang. Steve meets with Sharon, who retrieves their gear, and the two kiss. While the romance between them is nice, it's made very awkward considering his fate in Endgame. He, Sam, and Bucky meet with the rest at the airport in Leipzig. They plan to use a Quinjet to stop Zemo in Siberia, but are confronted by the others. We also get the iconic reveal shot of Spider-Man's MCU look, which is so cool. Tony tries to talk Steve down, but he's determined to prove Bucky's innocence, leading to both sides fighting in the airport. This moment is a highlight for many, and that's because the action is top-notch. Seeing our favorite heroes duke it out is a dream come true, but the conflict is still present. They also take the opportunity to showcase Black Panther and Spider-Man's powers, which is awesome. We even see Scott become Giant Man for a bit. Eventually, Steve and Bucky make for the Quinjet while the others stay behind. Vision, distracted by Wanda, misfires trying to stop them and hits Rhodey's core, causing him to fall from the sky, critically wounding him. Steve's team is captured and taken to the Raft, a prison for enhanced criminals. Rhodey is left paralyzed from the waist down, while Natasha comes under fire from Ross, who attacked T'Challa and helped Steve and Bucky escape. This sets up her movie, which we wouldn't see until Phase 4. Tony gets a hit from German authorities who discover the body of the real psychologist summoned by the CIA and facial prosthetics that disguise Zemo as Bucky, framing him. Tony goes to the raft and tries to convince Thunderbolt to change the gears, but he's a stubborn asshole that won't budge. He does manage to win over Sam, who gives him Steve and Bucky's location. He heads to Siberia while T'Challa secretly follows him. He catches up with the two and calls a truce to stop Zemo together. They reach the center of the base where Zemo has killed all the other Winter Soldiers. He reveals his intention was to never use them to topple governments, but to lure the Avengers there to tear them apart for what they did in Sokovia. He shows footage of Bucky's 1991 mission, where it's revealed the ones transporting the serum for S.H.I.E.L.D. were Tony's parents. Bucky crashed their car, stole the serum, and mercilessly killed them. This is one of the best twists in Marvel's history. While we had hints and nods to this event, it was never outright said until now, and seeing it puts Zemo's plan in a whole other light. It's no wonder he's considered to be one of the best villains in the MCU. Tony is, of course, infuriated by this truth and lashes out at Steve and Bucky in the climax. This is probably Marvel's most gut-wrenching fight. Seeing two of our favorite heroes at a point of nearly killing each other leaves me with a lump in my throat every time. The action is intense and even recreates the iconic shot from the comic. Eventually, Steve gets the upper hand, but as he goes for a killing blow, he stops and just disables Tony's suit. He carries Bucky away, who lost his metallic arm, and drops the shield, effectively relinquishing his role of Captain America. Tony is left to wallow in his sorrow. T'Challa confronts Zemo, who reveals his entire family was killed in the fall of Sokovia, and that he knew the only way to destroy the Avengers was to make them do it to each other. It's like the classic Lincoln quote, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." As Zemo goes to kill himself, T'Challa stops him and turns him over to Ross. Despite this, Zemo is still satisfied his mission is done. In the aftermath, Tony gives Rhodey specialized leg braces to help him walk again, leading to a hilarious Stan Lee cameo. Tony gets a letter from Steve apologizing for lying about his parents, but maintains his stance on the Accords. He does, however, give him a burner phone should he decide to contact him when needed. The film ends with Steve's narration over him breaking his team out of the raft, while Tony puts Thunderbolt on hold for being a dick. The mid-credit scene sees Steve and Bucky in Wakanda, where T'Challa's scientists put Bucky back on ice until a cure for his condition is found. Steve remarks that Thunderbolt will come after him, to which T'Challa replies, "Let them try." The post-credit scene shows Peter back at home with May, studying the new tech Tony gave him. Both set up each hero's standalone feature within the next year. And with that, the Civil War is over. I really liked this movie when it first came out. Now, it's in my top 5 favorite MCU films. This is one Marvel movie that will hold up for years to come. While the Avengers were busy with their breakup, Marvel decided to introduce another new hero to the saga. Join me next time when we look at Doctor Strange and see how much of a mindbender it still is. Until then, if you want to keep up with my videos, then be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and check out my VODs on my other channel. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and share with friends. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.